This is Accountex London 2023. We are broadcasting live with John Thompson. Hello to you, John.
Hi there, Rob. How are you doing?
We're doing great. Not your first rodeo, is it, John, this Accountex thing?
No, it's not. Been around a long time, Rob. Longer than you even, I believe.
Are you enjoying it today?
I think it's an excellent show today. I love the Silver Dream machine we're in now. Double-decker bus is fantastic as well.
We are the official broadcast partners of the show here at the Accounting Influencers podcast. We've done a few interviews today. You've been doing some talks, so you've got a talk planned, haven't you, John?
I'm talking about advisory at 5 o'clock, Rob. So everybody who stops listening to this, get over to Theatre 3.
There is still time.
And learn something.
Yeah, now you've been on a crusade for the last few years, John. Tell the audience a bit about what you do and what you talk about.
I'm the Chief Exec of Wisdom in Practice, and we market CAS, the complete advisory solution, to accountants, sometimes bookkeepers and consultants as well. And it's all about helping your clients do better.
You say it like it's so easy, but there's a lot of complex moving parts to that, isn't there?
There is, but I think the starting point is just being really clear what advisory is. And
Right.
I think there's a lot of complexity about advisory that is unnecessary. So one way to think about advisory is, let's focus on the clients. Let's stop talking about just business advisory and start talking about client advisory, which is the personal and the business.
Yep.
And then think about anything and everything that helps your clients do better.
You put it so succinctly and you make it sound very easy, but you're right, the waters are muddy out there and everyone's got a view on compliance and advisory and what it all is, but aren't accountants just doing what they've been doing for many years, or are they being asked to upgrade now and go further?
I think there's a choice for accountants. I think you can do advisory your way. I think by incorporating both the personal and the business, if you find business advisory a bit scary, don't do it. Concentrate on the personal advisory, which is very much about talking to your clients about what's important to them personally, their family, their lifestyle, what they're trying to achieve. Focus on that first as a stepping stone, maybe, into the more complex business advisory work.
What conversations have you been having today? You've been around all day talking to a lot of accountants and vendors as well in the technology space. What's been coming up?
From the accountants, I think there's a growing desire to do more advisory type work, to begin to build more advisory-led practices. And there's also, from the technology side, feeding into that, a little bit of uncertainty and maybe fear with some people about what is AI going to do to the profession.
What is it going to do to the profession?
I think it will be incorporated within the profession. I think accountants are very adaptable people. You only need to look at what they've adapted to over the last few years. But there's no doubt the accountants that focus on the human approach, the people approach, people to people will always be the number one relationship builder.
Who's driving the advisory agenda, John? Is it the clients asking more from their accountants, or the accountants wanting to deliver more for the clients, or maybe even something else?
I think it's a two-way thing. I think there's a growing number of accountants who are saying dealing just with numbers is not very exciting. So what about what's before the numbers and beyond the numbers? That's much more interesting. There's maybe some older accountants who are saying, I'm getting a little bit tired of being on the hamster wheel, and wouldn't it be much more interesting to spend a lot more time talking to their clients and indeed prospects? So it's more than one way. But if you ask any client what they want, they find it difficult to answer that question. But one of the tests I would say is if you put a personal balance sheet on the desk in front of a client and next to it put a business balance sheet, don't be surprised where all the questions are about. They're not about the business, they're about the personal balance sheet, because that's in here.
That's a really good point, because it is about, we do our business to fulfill our personal goals a lot of the time.
We do. We all have clients, or we've all worked with clients where they're in love with the business, but then they fall out of love with the business, but they never fall out of love with their family and their lifestyle and trying to retire on a good income, etc.
Is there a myth, John, out there that perhaps some accountants feel that if they're doing management accounts and meeting quarterly with their clients, and they've got some dashboards and pretty pictures and reporting tools and things like that, that they're in the realm of advisory?
I think, unfortunately, that's been an agenda driven by the fintechs,
Right.
and it is a bit of a red herring. I go back to that personal balance sheet.
Yes.
That is the most important thing. And having good information helps, but it's not the most important thing. That's my belief, and certainly that's the feedback we have from people who work with CAS.
And this, I call it a crusade, but you're just very passionate about it. That's why I say that. Is it a hard sell to accountants, or more and more are they starting to get it?
I don't think it's a hard sell necessarily, but it is something that requires them to change how they operate. So
They're not good at change, though, generally, John, are they?
They're not good at change, but I think sometimes they don't see the wood for the trees. So I was working with a practice 2 weeks ago, and the question was, how do you scale advisory? And the partner's name was Mark, and I said, well, Mark, how have you scaled everything else in your business? And he said, well, we put processes in place, we set targets, we train the people. I go, there's your answer.
When you do your keynote in a little while, John, hopefully to a packed out audience, they will want some quick wins. How do I get started? How do I dip my toes in? What advice will you be giving them?
The starting point, we would say, is decide whether you want to work with winning new business, or whether you want to essentially transition some of your existing clients into a more advisory-led relationship. And once you've decided that, then there's some simple processes you can put in place that says, what do we do when we have a prospecting meeting? Well, we need to follow a certain process that leads clients through these kinds of conversations about what's important to them. Or indeed, the other side of the coin, if you want to work with your existing clients, how do we build those processes in? In one sense, Rob, it's just great client care.
You say that as if it's very natural, but many accountants I speak to, they want it laid out for them in a very prescriptive way. Say this, ask this, go through these 3 steps, show them this, so that it's almost a checklist, and they do well with checklists. Is that a feasible way to approach this?
There's no doubt some accountants like a script.
Yeah.
They like to
As
go...
long as it's delivered naturally.
Absolutely,
yeah,
but
in their
that
own style.
comes with experience.
Of
So
course.
everybody who starts with a script, very quickly, they'll go slightly off script and they'll start using their own words and their own language. They'll talk about things that they're most comfortable to talk about, but that just gives them a starter for 10.
Yeah. What's your hope for the future, John? You're going to be in this game for a few more years yet. If we're sat here saying 3, 4, 5 years, talking about advisory and its adoption in the accounting profession, what would you like to be speaking about?
I think that's a great question, Rob, and I'll answer that in a slightly obtuse manner. We're currently running a survey.
Okay.
And we're asking accountants to basically tell us what they're currently doing and what they'd like to see for themselves and their practice going forward. And the
Are
results...
accountants the best judge of that?
Well, all we're asking them to do is tell us what they're doing and what they'd like to do.
Okay.
And the results that are coming back has really pleasantly surprised us. So, for instance, more than half of the respondents are telling us that within 3 years they want more than half of their fees to be advisory fees.
Wow.
Now, I would never have foreseen that. I would have thought, oh, accountants, bit cautious, bit careful. If they'd said, I don't know, 25, 30%, I would have thought, great. But actually, to say more than half, I'm just going, wow.
And they don't have to give up compliance, do they?
Well, no, they shouldn't give up compliance, because one of the little things to think about is put yourself in your client's shoes, and everything's advisory. Clients don't talk about advisory compliance. They talk about, what are you doing to help me, keep me out of trouble, help me do better.
Yeah. And finally, John, you're very passionate about this and you speak with such conviction. What drives you?
What drives me is I've seen how working in this way can transform clients' lives. And interesting enough, on the panel at 5 o'clock, there'll be one of the speakers there, or one of the panel members will be talking about how the work he is doing in the words of the client, is transforming their lives.
Wow. Transformation, love it. John Thompson, that's been great. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thanks, Rob.